welcome back to Hoover Espresso, and today we're going to be discussing the forthcoming animation Galaxy 4 by William Ems. This is coming out and produced by Big Finish Creative, who did the animation for Fury from the Deep, and I also believe the Web of Fear Part 3, they had something to do with that, and obviously BBC Studios. Now, I was fortunate enough to see this at the BFI, much like Evil of the Daleks. The animation tend to be not as popular, which I always think is a bit weird, to be honest, because it's a completely new thing, whereas the collection ones are always like stories you can watch at home. But never mind, I digress. We're going to be talking about the animation quality, like what I think of the actual animation first. So if you are wary of like minor spoilers for a story, bearing in mind story is like nearly 6 years old, there will be spoilers after I talk about the animation quality, just to make you aware. But yeah, let's get into the review. So, right off the bat, I'm going to talk about the animation thing. And, I mean, with Fury from the Deep and the Big Finish ones that they've released, like the Web of Fear Part 3, the animation style has been somewhat divisive, I think, particularly for Web of Fear, which caused a lot of weird moments, I think, because they tried to do it in 3D, and I just don't think that the BBC really has the budget to do that effectively, as shown by their numerous attempts at this point, including even their video game attempts, which I saw that Edge of Reality, this new one, got a few complaints as well because the likenesses were really off. But I don't know, I haven't played that, so I can't comment. And again, completely different studio, so it doesn't really apply. But moving on to the animation itself, it is very similar to the Fury from the Deep style. Not much has changed that much. The faces are a bit smaller, but they have managed to remove the sort of longer, like, arms, which were really odd when I first watched Fury from the Deep. And there aren't as many weird facial things. Like, I remember when I watched Fury from the Deep, something that really stuck out to me was Patrick Troughton's sort of chin. It looked really awkward, but I think they've actually got William Hartnell's likeness really well. Although I would say it looks more like Richard Hurndall than it does William Hartnell, in my opinion, to be honest. It's still recognisable as the First Doctor, but at this point we've had so many people play the First Doctor that they kind of all merged together, and I think that's kind of what we've got in this animation. You can see a bit of William Hartnell in there, you can see a bit of Richard Hurndall in there, and you can kind of see a bit of David Bradley in there, not as much though, but it definitely feels like a combo between the two. In general, the character likenesses for Vicky was usually good throughout. There isn't as many range of expression. Like with Evil of the Daleks, they had a lot more time, I think. So the sort of movements you could do were a lot better, and the different facial angles you could do were a lot better. Here, that isn't really the case, but it's still more fluid than I'd say Fury. So, I mean, in general, for Big Finish Creative, I think this is the best one they've done. In terms of, animation-wise. As a story, I mean, I'll get into the actual story of Galaxy 4. I thought the last part of Galaxy 4 was actually really good, but the rest of it, not so much. But yeah, the animation of the Chumblies was really great. They had to take a bit of creative license, I think, with this, because there's no telesnaps for this story. So there's bits and bobs, like all these different attachments which they've added in, which I think are really nice and sort of adds to the personality of the Chumblies. Also kind of gives it a more modern feel to it, in the sense that, much like the Macra, the design obviously was a bit lacking. So in this one, they've kind of added stuff to it, rather than just making it completely faithful to the original prop. I don't know, they may well have had these. They've got these sort of wire things and this sort of laser thing that pops out of it as a weapon, which I'm not sure they had in the original one. I may be wrong. I know they have the gun things, which I think probably were on the original prop, but they've got those weird arm things, which are new, I think. I mean, if I'm wrong, correct me in the comments, I guess. But yeah, so that kind of... Another thing that's maybe worth pointing out is that they took a bit of creative license by having all the soldier Dravens. They're all literally identical. So it is a bit odd, because there's, in the original episode, they would have had 3 different actresses. Here, they do not have that, they're just clones, which I guess adds to the authenticity that they are clones, which was the point in the plot, that they were a clone race and that certain females were actual people, and then there was a whole class of soldiers. So that is a part of the plot, and it does kind of add to that effectiveness. I do kind of feel sorry for the 2 people whose likenesses were not captured. I guess it kind of makes sense from a budgetary point of view as well, because you only have to have 3 different characters, animated puppet things to do. I don't really know how it works, but I guess it makes sense story-wise and budgetary. I just maybe think that there could have been more be done to include those 2 actresses whose performances are now kind of lost. I mean, you can still hear them, sure, but you kind of don't have that visual recognition anymore. I mean, there's still episode 3 of Airlock that she survives, and it's not like the performance is completely lost, but, you know, it might have been nice to just keep that in for the sake of authenticity. That's the only thing I'd say that I think they maybe shouldn't have changed. Like, I know they've done these things to modernise them and make them actually feel more coherent, so it doesn't take you out of the story, because like if you saw a Macra like they were in the 60s, it takes you out of the story, to be honest, just seeing a really clunky prop. And likewise, if you're being told someone's a clone, I mean, a most notable example of this is the Sontaran experiment, where Sarah Jane says it's Lynx, but it's very obviously not Lynx because they changed the masks. So, I mean, if they were to do an animation of Sontaran experiment, they'd probably just use a Lynx model to do that, and it would just be like that. And it just would kind of spoil the effect of having the new mask, which I think is actually, I don't know, I kind of prefer the Lynx mask, but it's that question of, is it right to take that element away from the story? But yeah, that's the animation, really. It's not great, it's pretty choppy, but it's watchable, you know? There are some moments like running is usually like intense movement with these animations. It's not great, but it's fun to watch. Like, it's not impossible to watch, and I know there's a lot of rumours flying around that they may be cancelling the animations from next year on. I'm not entirely sure of the validity of that, so don't quote me on that. I believe some random person on Gallifrey Base mentioned it, and they've now been removed, supposedly, as far as I'm aware. I'm not on Gallifrey Base, so I can't verify this, but I've seen it on Twitter. So if this is one of the last animations we get, I think we really need to appreciate that these have happened, and maybe not complain all the time about the animation. I know I have just done a critical analysis of this animation, so make them a bit of a hypocrite, but still, I think we do need to kind of appreciate that we wouldn't have these stories if it wasn't for the animation team and BBC America who's funded them. So I guess we take the bad with the good and just appreciate we've got the animated story. Moving on to the actual story itself, I do enjoy it, but I do think that, much like most classic Doctor Who stories, it is just too long. You could easily have cut episode 3 out or something and made it a 3-parter, or merge episodes 2 and 3 together. Episode part 1 is quite atmospheric, it's quite intense, and you got the setting up of the Dravens and the Chumbleys, and they're all lovely. The Chumbleys are hilarious. I really am so sad that we don't have any kind of Chumbley figure. If Character Options is watching this, just make a Chumbley figure. The world needs it. The world does need it. I mean, I can see where they were going from a standpoint of, maybe these can be the new Daleks, which was a very common thing in the 60s, where they were trying to experiment with lots of different things that are Dalek-like to try and get people to buy into them in the same way of Dalek Mania, because that sparked so much for the BBC in terms of merchandising and throwing the show into the popular consciousness. I mean, there are examples throughout. You got the gonk. No, they're not the gonks. The mechanoids. Yeah, they're kind of like that. And of course, the Zarbi and the Menoptera were all very supposedly Dalek-like characters. So yeah, but from that standpoint, they are a bit of a Dalek, rip-off, I guess. But they're kind of new in the sense that they're kind of a comedic Dalek. They're kind of fun, cute little robots, and they don't mean any harm. They're not evil. They just want to take the Duravans home from the exploding planet. That is another thing. The exploding planet, like, plotline does add a sense of tension to it, particularly when, obviously, there is a slight spoiler here. Obviously, the Rills think that it's going to be 14 dawns, but it's actually 2, which adds a real sense of tension going throughout the other 2 episodes as they are kind of racing against the clock throughout the story. Particularly in that last plot where like 6 hours goes down in like 2 minutes. It's crazy, you know? And it's just constantly like, are they going to make it out in time? And you never know. Well, I'm not going to reveal if they do, because that'd be a big spoiler. But, I mean, I've given away a few ones there, so... So yeah, overall, a real sense of tension throughout the story, I think. And the Duravans are an interesting villain. I think they I love their design, like the bright blue costumes and obviously in the original production they had sort of lace-up boots. Here they've got go-go boots. They're very 60s type characters, which I think kind of work really well. And it's kind of an interesting commentary, I guess, on how people... I don't know, it's just sort of, they're an interesting species, because they kind of, like, subvert your expectations on what a Doctor Who villain can be, I guess. And particularly at the time, I guess, it was quite a different approach to a villain, I guess. But I do prefer the Chumblies, and the Rills are kind of weird. They're kind of like Jabba the Hutt, which I think is what I first thought when I saw them. They're kind of green and blobby. And I wish we'd kind of seen more of them, you know? They all seem like such nice people. But overall, I mean, this story is just a fun little gem. And it's lovely 60s, sort of vibrant story. That's another thing with the animation. They've added, like, backdrops and really large vistas, like large scoping planets, which is interesting because obviously in the panel, like, Peter Purves commented that the studio was not that big. Like, it was a teeny tiny set, but here, with the new backgrounds and stuff they've added, it really adds a sense of scope to the story, as well as the final ending scene where the planet explodes. You've got a Thin Ice moment where a Dravan falls into the lava, which reminded me of, I can't remember his name now, when that other guy fell into, like, the Thames when the ice broke. So, it reminded me of that. So, it is a little derivative in that sense. But also, another thing that I noticed is the planet kind of reminded me of the planet from the start of the Caretaker. So does my headcanon. The 12th Doctor and Clara visited this planet. I can't remember what it was called now, but yeah. So yeah, overall, strong-ish story. It's kind of weak, I guess, in a way, but the Chumblies make every second worth it. Honestly, they are adorable. I cannot believe they didn't take off, to be honest, because they are just perfect. And I really hope we get to see them again in some form, because I just loved them. I mean, I've been wanting them to animate Galaxy 4 for ages. I mean, I did read the script for this one time when on holiday, in like one sitting. So, I mean, there's clearly something gripping about the story, even if it's not necessarily as intense when you watch it as an episode. So, yeah, I'd rate this as kind of like, it's a fairly good start and a fairly good end, which is pretty standard for a lot of classic Doctor Who stories in my opinion. So I'd maybe give it a 6 or a 7 out of 10, maybe a 6.5 out of 10. I think that's fair. That's kind of in the middle. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Galaxy 4. It is coming out on Monday, I believe, the 15th of November. So yeah, you can get the Steelbook or the Amazon on Amazon and Savvy and everywhere, and I believe you can get the DVD and Blu-ray from pretty much everywhere too. So yeah, that's the missing animation of Galaxy 4. Coming out on Monday. I'm not sure where it comes out in America. I believe they'll be airing it. They've only just aired Evil of the Daleks in America. So if you want to help support the animations, if those rumours of the funding for these being withdrawn is true, if you're America, go watch those animations, because the fate of the future of these animations could be on the line. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, why not leave your thoughts on Galaxy 4 if you have seen it, if you went to the BFI, or if you're excited to go see Galaxy 4 on Monday, or if you're watching this in the future and you have just watched Galaxy 4 on Steelbook or Blu-ray or whatever, and you want to give your thoughts, just tell me your thoughts. Do you love the Chumblies? Do you too want Chumbly merchandise to line the walls of your local toy store? If so, just let me know. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.